Hey everybody, my name is Jim Farmer. I'm the festival director of Out on Film. Thanks for joining us today. We have one more day. We end tomorrow. Today's film is Stone Fruit. So thanks for joining us. I am very happy that we have the Stone Fruit team with us. So I will go around the room, let everyone introduce themselves. Brandon.
Yeah, I'm the director, the co-writer, and one of the producers of the film.
Okay, great. Rob.
I play Russ.
Okay. And Thomas.
Hi, I'm Thomas, and I play Byron.
Great. Thank you all for joining us today. So Brandon, how did this film come about for you?
I had been wanting to write a feature film for a while, and I met Robert at a mutual friend's wedding in Chicago, and he's like, "Hey, you're moving to San Francisco. I live in San Francisco. We should be friends." I learned that he was a poet, and I was like, "I wonder if we can take some of your prose and work with me on writing a script." And that's what happened. It took us about 2 years to write it, to finally workshop it. There were whole stretches of like 6 months period where we didn't write. So if we had actually focused and written this, we could have probably gotten it done in like 3 months. But we just had too much trivia to go to, too many drag shows to watch. So it took a while to write it, but it wasn't really inspired by anything except our kind of life in the Bay Area. We both lived in San Francisco, and we have a lot of really overeducated, art fags that we associate with. And we're like, what are our lives like right now? And like, we want to write something about a breakup story that's more than a breakup story, something that involves marriage for gay people, which at the time was only a couple of years old, I think, officially.
I was reading notes this morning, and this is sort of referred to as an anti-romantic comedy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's funny, and there's romance, and they get a divorce. I mean, we've seen a lot of like Robert and I, when we're going through, we're like, what do we want this movie to look like? And we watched a lot of gay film, and all of it was just, a lot of it was very frustrating for us, just because, we've already come out. We don't live in a country, we're not repressed, right? And those stories are all valid for those people. But for us, like, what is this like? And we didn't want to create a romantic comedy where like two guys meet, it's really great, and they have a happy life after that, because nobody ever does. So we're like, what can we do to just plop someone in the middle of a relationship that has already kind of gone through that honeymoon phase and is now truly at its end? And it was always about, when we wrote it, we wanted the audience to fight for these two, Manny and Russ. And I've had friends that have seen the movie and they're like, oh, we really want them to stay together. And I was like, God, no. I mean, like, they are great at certain points, but really, like, you just got to learn when to drop it. And so I think that's really what the anti-romantic comedy-ness about it is.
So the relationship that Manny and Russ has is a very complicated one, as you mentioned. I mean, Rob, can you talk a little bit about what these characters have gone through over the years and how they find themselves at this place in their lives?
So we
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. Well, just from my perspective, it's not unlike a lot of gay couples and straight couples you see out there, sort of yin and yang, opposites attract in some ways, but I think it allows you to dive deeper into that cliche and get into the heads of two people who really love each other, because they're sort of what the other person represents in a lot of ways what they're not. Russ always admired Manny for his ability to be free, his artistic expression. At the same time, it was one of the things that drove him nuts, his sort of unkempt and wild lifestyle that didn't fit into Russ's very narrow box. But I think, while that storyline has been done in a gay relationship, there's an added element, which I think is really exciting and fun to play in, where these two men have sort of grown up with each other. They've matured as, partners. And as any gay man can attest, we grow up being a version of ourselves that's not the true version of ourselves, right? A lot of us grow up in the closet. Some take years, decades to come out. And so there's a lot of coming out that happens after you just say you're gay. There's a lot of sort of recognizing who you are as a person. And I think that's something that Russ and Manny sort of went through together. And the more they realized who they were as people, they realized they weren't each other's people for the rest of their lives. But that they had each other through that process, which is really great.
As a get near that point where they are going on their trip and winding down and ready to, I mean, what are they both going through? I mean, is it, I mean, how melancholy is it to be at this point in their lives?
I don't know that I've only ever been in one relationship, like a serious one, before my current one, and that was terrible. It only lasted a month. So I would love Rob or Tommy to speak to that, because at least as far as the writing goes, melancholy or like ending something long term, I think Robert, our co-writer, is the one who kind of injected that into it. So I can't really speak from experience in terms of like, what are they worried about in terms of relationships stuff. So
Yeah.
Tom Robbie, do you have experience about breaking up with someone long term? What does it feel like?
Well,
Um,
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I know Tommy's been with his partner for 11 years, longer.
just 14, just 14.
Yeah,
It's
14.
fine.
Okay. But so I moved to LA about 5 years ago, before the film was shot, and I had a boyfriend in San Francisco that I had to sort of say goodbye to. It was not a similar sort of character arc, if you will, but we had fallen, we had dated, we had broken up. We had both gone through breakups about 6 months before I was ready to leave, and we sort of rekindled our relationship, fell in love, and surprisingly so. I think part of it was, not having the pressure of a long-term relationship, because we knew I was leaving. That allowed us to be free and to fall in love deeper. And so when it came time to leave, there was a real struggle about, do we try to make this work long distance? And I mean, this is long distance LA to SF. It's not long distance, SF to Dubai, or even, across coast, which a lot of people do. So it could have been feasible, but I think there's a real sort of beautiful sadness in knowing that your paths are diverging, but the time you've had together was still worth it. It was still, a life experience that I wouldn't trade away despite the sorrow, knowing that I had that 6 months with that person who is still one of my dearest friends, is an experience I wouldn't give away. And even if we were to live in the same city, I don't think we would get together. Like I don't see us even having that potential long-term option now, but just to know that we had the love that we had was really special and beautiful. That's the beautiful sadness of saying goodbye, parting.
I would say, like, just adding that, as far as like what I try to put in, I'm a very pragmatic person. And so the idea of, I see every life as just a journey, and you have companions that are with you along for certain periods. And to me, that comes through in Manny a little bit. And I mean, I'll say I'm all three characters in the sense that, like, I wrote them all. I'm probably more like Russ in general, but Manny to me is where I'm like, okay, we need to move separately. I want to do this. You want to do this. If we can't make it work, like, let's just reflect on this amazing thing we created together and grew. And that's really amazing. It doesn't need to be something you fight for if it doesn't work, or something you need to be really sad about, because there's so many good things that came out of it.
Okay. Tommy, talk a little bit about Byron and how he fits into this equation with the other two.
It's funny. I remember when I read the script for the first time, I was so intrigued by him,
Mhm.
and I feel like he is, their friendship has very blurred lines, but I do believe that he is a person who really cares deeply for both of them. And I think that's, and also a person who somehow, while complicating their relationship, he also took a lot of joy in their relationship and a lot of hope. He got a lot of hope out of their relationship for his own life, and it's really interesting. We talked about this, the three of us recently, that, like, I think within the gay community, like the Zennials, are sort of so used to seeing gay people on TV and in film and in life, and being sort of depicted in really diverse and wonderful ways, and that wasn't really around for me. And I have become a person in a relationship that people look to and are like, oh, look, there's our favorite gay couple. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, because there just weren't a lot of those to look up to, or to model yourself after, or to believe that, like, when people told you, you'd be alone forever, or you would never be happy, like, and I feel like these people are that for Byron. Like they're the people who, whatever past he's bringing with him, like these are the people who make him hopeful that he has a bright future. You know, and it's hard when those sort of idyllic couples and things sort of crumble.
I will say, like, when we wrote Byron, we very much did not want the trope of the magical black man character, which I guess what's an example of that? Maybe Green Book, you know, where a black guy comes in and sort of through his own character fixes the white guy's racial problems. In this case, we didn't want Byron to come in and like make everything better. Byron was very much always his own entity. And I mean, really, he's the biggest winner. He gets in.
He gets in, and he gets
figuratively gets in, gets to sleep with two cute guys and then get out, you know, like, so he was never meant to be just like someone who fixes a relationship or like complicate it too much. He's just another person kind of passing through on Manny and Russ's journey. And I mean, he doesn't get his bottle of wine in the end, I guess. They do drink that, but
the bastards took my wine.
Oh man.
As soon as you leave.
Yeah.
I was, oh, by the way, I was gonna say Green Mile when you said Green Book. I was thinking, I was like, he was literally magical.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
That's another good example. I'm sure we could, like, Blindside is a little white savior-ish, but that the black football character does kind of come and improve people's lives as well. Byron doesn't really improve anything here, so we made sure of that.
Yeah.
So Manny and Russ are in an interracial relationship. Well, Brandon, would you say that there's any kind of white privilege as part of this relationship?
Yeah, but it's much harder for me to see it as a white person. Someone who's been in interracial relationships, and Robert, again, my co-writer, is you know, he's Filipino, he's dating a white man. When we talked about this, there's always dynamics of a relationship, and I think that you know, race is one of them. And I told Robin, I'm like, look, whatever kind of discussions you want to put in this movie, I'm not really qualified to make them. You should do it, you know. But I don't want this to be a movie entirely about race. One, because I'm not totally qualified to do that. Also, I think there's other things with the relationship we wanted to explore. So in terms of that, yeah, I mean, I guess there for Russ, it's the idea of kind of being an elitist and kind of not including Manny in certain things. Any kind of, he needs to feel that power. And I think, Rob, you had way better, as someone who kind of acted it, an answer to this question. I don't know if I answered everything for Jim, but again, anytime race came up, I always kind of deferred to Robert to talk about it. And he certainly asked about my experiences. Anything that Russ says is generally me. And so do I recognize that sometimes? Yes. Do I not recognize that power dynamic sometimes? Yes. I'm both good and evil for sure.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciated the fact that this wasn't the traditional meet cute. It wasn't about two guys who meet, you know, getting coffee or bumping into each other. They have a complication, and then by, you know, in 20 minutes everything's fine. I mean, this is a very complex story, and I appreciate that. There are some, I was reading some of the notes this morning, and you mentioned that there were some allusions perhaps to Weekend, some of Richard Linklater's Before Children. Can either one of you talk about that?
I think that's what I gave to homework for Rob, and I don't know, Tommy, if I can. One of the things that Robert brought up on our call previously with Chicago was that when Robert and I wrote the script, we created these like massive dossiers for these characters, which I don't think I ended up sharing with the actors, but it was really silly things like, you know, what's their first memory of their parents together? And like, what NPR show do they listen to? Or like, what's a song that they cry to? And it was just a way for Robert and I to always kind of, even though that script that's never really in the script itself, I think that's what makes the characters just deeper. And again, it's because of the way these actors portray it. But I know I for sure gave Rob and Matt a list of movies to watch that inspired us, and Weekend and Before Sunrise was definitely on there. Rob, do you remember if there's something else? Probably Beetlejuice, maybe. I don't remember.
No, I mean, I just remember I had actually never seen Before Sunrise, and
What?
I know,
What?
shame, for shame, but now I have, so all is good.
Have you completed the trilogy?
I have.
Okay, all right. We can be friends still. We can be friends.
Okay,
still.
good. Phew, dodge that bullet. I think there's just, I mean, there's multiple ways to tell a story. I think the beauty of a film like this, where you get to have characters reliving it in the moment without doing flashbacks. I think that was something I really appreciated, and obviously it's done in those movies. And it just, and instead of watching it as an audience, you get to see these characters reflect on it. And so they're reliving their whole, like Before Sunrise, you know, they're meeting and they're falling in love. This they're rehashing old fights. They're bringing up new ones. They're sort of reliving their entire relationship in a weekend, which I think is really beautiful and a testament to Robert and Brandon's writing, that they're able to do that without two people sitting around talking about things that have happened. You know, I think there's a trap when you're writing a script where characters relive moments, and that it can sound like, oh gosh, well, just show us already, you know, like what happened at that fight, or, you know, how did they meet? You know, it's cute coffee guy, like, let's see that story. But it's so much more enjoyable to watch Matt relive that moment for him than it is to, you know, do some Scooby-Doo transition to a flashback, you know?
Yeah, and I'll say, I think that it's great too, in that, like, when I first read the script, I felt like it read like a play. And I know we talked about this the other day as well, but I was like, yeah, like, I was really struck with the language of it. And I thought, like, how often do you get to be in a scene in film or TV and you have to talk for 10 pages? Like, that's such a rare thing in the film and TV world, where everything is, you know, 1 to 2 pages, maybe 3 or 4 at the most, because we're trying to get this. And it was just so great to, especially with Rob and Matt, you know, by my side, like, live in 10 to 12 pages of dialogue and have a full arc within that. Like, each scene was like its own little act, which was also really wonderful.
I had to ask you about that last scene, because there's a lot of tenderness and poignancy in that last scene. But I mean, can you talk a little bit about that last scene?
About the scene where they're dancing at the bar together?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it started with, well, we were just, by the end of the movie, we were sick about drinking so much wine. And so we're like, where can we take them? There's no wine, or there is wine, but there's options. And we're like, what do we should go to a bar. And if you've been to bar and wine countries, there's not a ton of them. There's like, at least in Paso, the few that there are, they're really hipster and they're actually kind of cool. We're like, what if we just have this like lame dive bar that we go to and have beer, and just as kind of like a palate cleanser, I guess, both literally and figuratively. And we also knew that we wanted to put the Magnetic Field song in the Book of Love. So those are our two ideas. We need to have beer and we need to have the Book of Love. And I also heard this really amazing NPR story like a week before we were writing a scene about, which makes it in the movie, where this guy has this degenerative disease, and he records all these things because he knows that he's going to lose his hearing. So he plays it over and over and over so that it sticks in his memory forever. And in the real story, he does lose his hearing, but the thing that he recorded the most often was his wife's laugh, which I was like, God, straight people, and they're annoying. Sometimes they just get it right. You know, that was so beautiful. And so I was like, I want to put this in the movie. How can I shoehorn this story about a laugh into this bar scene? So those were the 3 elements that we worked with. And again, it's just, I mean, it's just more talking, you know, more talking. But that's really the genesis of it, those 3 elements.
Okay.
But that was the most, if I may, just real quick, that was the toughest scene to film for me. Because first of all, if you've never shot a scene where there's music playing, there's never music playing. So because of sound, if there's ever dialogue, there's never music playing. So this is a fun little trick. If you watch a TV show and people are dancing, notice how everybody's dancing to a different song on a different beat, because the place is silent. So we had to not only manifest this song, which was deeply personal for Manny and Russ, but, you know, saying this goodbye, like, I had to get a little method, because I had lived this experience where I said goodbye to a friend, to this, you know, person I loved. And it was insanely complicated. And another funny thing was that when Manny walks over to Russ, our height differences were different, obviously, but we had to look like we were close up. And I just remember that Matt did this thing where he was standing on his tippy toes, and then as he walked over, he slowly got, or maybe vice versa. He was standing and then he slowly walked over on his tippy toes and then he stood on an apple box to get to my level. And it was like I had to not only manifest all those emotions, but meanwhile Matt was walking like a clown person. It was just like, it was a really it was a loaded day, I'll say that much.
Yeah, and that was after that we shot in 3 weeks and that was our last shoot day. So I mean, it really was goodbye for everyone. I mean, that scene, it just ended up falling on the schedule as our last day, but also the last scene of the film.
Rob and Tommy, what's it like working with Brandon as a first-time director?
You know what? I'm gonna be honest. I loved it. I love sort of everything about the experience. I didn't know anyone before this, and I auditioned right before we started filming via tape, and then I had this wonderful like solo drive up to Paso Robles where we filmed up in Central California, and I was just like, I'm gonna go and stay in the Airbnb with a bunch of strangers in the middle of nowhere and make a movie. And I just thought everyone was great. I've told Brandon we're buddies. We hang out back in the old world when you could do that. And he's actually one of the last people I had a drink with in public. But I understood immediately how his brain worked. And there were things that he was very precious about, that he wanted a certain way that he heard in his mind. But most of the things he just kind of like liked what we were doing. And I think that's always great. Like I love when directors, are specific about certain things and then give you room to play in other areas. I think that's always fun for an actor.
As I was doing my research, I honestly didn't know about Matt. That is just, it's just so heartbreaking. I mean, can y'all talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make you do it again, Rob. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's fine. No. It's so I had the fortune. So Robert, the co-writer, actually found Matt. They had a mutual friend. But when I was cast, I read with a couple other actors who weren't quite right for the role. So then I got a call from Brandon saying, "You got the part, and we're still looking for your Manny. Okay, we've cast him and he's in West Hollywood, so let's all get together." Brandon came down, he was living in Oakland at the time. He came down, we got a drink, wine, of course, and got to know this like incredibly warm, welcoming, beautiful person right off the bat. And I was lucky in that we had some opportunity to do this homework before the film. Like Tommy said, he got the role soon before we started. So we had more time together to develop a relationship, which I mean, everyone knew was important as two people portraying a relationship, that we had there was a genuine base there. And I mean, I could talk about Matt for years. I'm lucky enough to get this shirt from him. He was truly Manny and more. Like he was beautiful and vibrant and lovely. And there's that line at the end of the film, you just have so much potential. Maybe I just don't know what to do with you. Don't know what to do with you. And he says, of course, maybe I'm not something must be done with. And then Russ chides him for ending a sentence in a preposition. But Matt was an activist. He was an actor. He was a friend. When he passed, we had a life celebration ceremony in West Hollywood. You'd have thought Obama was in town. It was in the West Hollywood Green. It was packed to the gills. And everybody who knew him had been touched by him in a profound way. There was no, oh, we met at a bar once, or, oh, he was a friend of a friend. It was like, Matt and I met, and for some reason we spent the whole party in a corner by ourselves, just talking about life and this experience that I had had. And he comforted me. And 4 hours later, I realized, my date had left and the party was ending, but all I wanted to do was talk to Matt. I mean, that's who he was. Every experience you had with him was a full lifetime of experiences. He was just that incredible. And so obviously it was very tragic when he died.
For audience members who don't know, Matt passed away. It was a hiking accident?
He was hiking in the outback in Australia. Yeah, he died of heat stroke and dehydration.
And he was he early 30s?
34, I think he just
34, yeah. I saw him the night before he got on the plane to Australia. He actually took a midnight flight, and I was at his apartment because his roommate and I are friends, and we play board games often. And Matt had a tendency to be a bit of a recluse. So we got back from filming, and I was so excited because I had recently moved to LA, and here I had this brand new friend in Matt. We had just spent 3 weeks, you know, an intense 3 weeks filming together. And we got back to LA, and I was like, okay, great. When are we hanging out? And he was like, I don't know, bye. And that was just Matt. He went and did his own thing, and you were so lucky to get some time with him. And I remember I came over to his apartment just to play board games, and I have a photo of him wearing his backpack that he had just bought to take to Australia to go hiking. And it was, you know, it's one of those awfully tragic moments where if anyone had known, I wouldn't have spent the night playing board games. You know, I would have spent it soaking up every last minute with him. But
yeah, I think it's frustrating professionally because I know he had a web series. If you can look him up on IMDb, he had quite a few credits, but I feel like this was his first like starring role in a film. And so he like died 6 months almost to the day that we wrapped filming. And of course, this was not done. He hadn't seen anything of it. I mean, there's no dailies, nothing that was shared with anyone. So for me, my grieving process was, I mean, like I definitely fell in love with him in maybe like a platonic sense while shooting. It could be just me stroking my own ego, watching like a very attractive guy say words that I wrote, but also just working with him. I remember that scene in the bar that you brought up, the NPR story.
Yeah.
So I changed it quite a bit, like the week we were shooting, and I came into Matt's bedroom, and he was on the bed, and he had the script out in front of him, and he had notes in every single centimeter of the page. It was our words printed out. Matt just had notes about everything and just about things for himself. And I came in, I was like, you know, that looks like a bit of a manifesto. It's scary. And he's like, well, this is what I do to get into it. And I was like, well, you know what, I like what you've done so far. It's been like a week. There's something I want to change about the last scene, and it's going to be much wordier. Do you think you can handle it? And so he said yes, and I read him what I wrote, which was pretty close to the final NPR monologue. And he was crying a little bit. He's like, yes, I'll do it. And I think it was, I mean, that's one of my last memories of him, I guess. And because after shooting, I didn't see him at all, you know, and when he passed, it was me for 2 years editing this thing, like seeing him in a way every single day, knowing that he wouldn't be able to see it either. And it's, I mean, I went through the stages of grief, but I was angry most of the time, just really, really angry at some injustice. And anyway, it was, I mean, we all took it, you know, hard in different ways, I think.
Brendan, how did that affect finishing the film, editing the film, getting the film ready?
Oh, it was terrible, especially since we had a DIT issue, a download issue, where the first 10 minutes of the movie, which were all shot relatively close together. So it's from everything in the house, basically, that opens the film. The sound didn't download at all. So we had no sound at all. Matt and Rob were completely gone. So Alex and I, when we were editing it, we could barely make out the camera sound. It was terrible. You could definitely not use it. So eventually what we had to do was we had to find someone who sounded a little bit like Matt. And so if you watch the movie, if you go back, you might be able to hear it, but the first 10 minutes of the movie up until they get to the fruit stand, because the car audio was also really terrible, we ended up recording that. It's totally a different person. It wasn't even an actor, it was just a friend of Matt's who was also a gay Filipino who sounded kind of like him. I can hear the difference, but most people cannot. We just had a really, really great sound designer. So just in terms of him not being there, I mean, that really, it was just like bad luck on top of bad luck, you know, not having an audio for the first 10 minutes of the movie, and then him not being there to record it. And like, we had his dad do voice stuff. We had his brother do voice stuff. I mean, we auditioned, it must've been like 20 people to send us voice samples to see what worked best. And there was just nothing good until his friend Steven came along and did the audio for us.
So you're pretty early right now in the festival on this film, correct?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Where was your premiere?
I want to say we premiered in Fargo, North Dakota, which never in my life did I think that would happen. But it was only because of we actually got into Miami, the Outshine in Miami in March, or I think that was going to take place in April. But then obviously with COVID, it derailed that, and so everyone just kept pushing back or canceling. So it ended up being Fargo, North Dakota, and they're very sweet. But I think Palm Springs also started like on the same day. So yeah, it's only been like 2 months, and we're in consideration for festivals through to the end of April, I want to say.
Good, good. You know, assuming that you're hopeful of distribution down the line.
Yeah, we have actually gotten 1.5 offers. I say one offer because it was a full one, a half offer because they asked if the movie was available, can we see it? And I sent it and haven't heard back. So I'll count that as 1.5 offers. Yeah. So, I mean, the point of so frustrating is like making this movie and spending so much of my money on it and so much of my time. After 2.5 years, it's finally done. And all I want to do is watch it with a room full of strangers, and I can't. So, I mean, I really appreciate you guys for putting on, you know, a festival.
Yeah.
But like ultimately you want to see your work with strangers in a room, and it can happen. So it's frustrating, but ultimately like you want as many people to see it, however they see it, you know, that's the point.
Yeah, that has been, I mean, I love the live component of the film festival and having filmmakers down and having patrons interact. I missed it a lot. But having said that, you know, Zoom at least allows us to be here and to engage more people and to record these conversations and actually make them a little bit longer, which is something that I've enjoyed. So what's next for all three of you?
Oh, someone else go first.
Tommy's, we should lead up to Tommy because he's got the most.
All right, wait. Yeah, so you go.
Yeah, I have I have a small role in another film that's making the festival circuit, Breaking Fast, and then I have a couple films that are in post right now, a couple short films, and then the good news that we got is like right as COVID hit, which unfortunately doesn't seem like it'll come into fruition anytime soon. But I'm in a musical parody of Bachelor, the Bachelor shows called, if you can believe it, Bachelor the Musical. And we had done a few shows in LA, and we had just been purchased to do a national tour. So hopefully that we'll get to do that once people can go into theaters with strangers.
Yeah. Tommy?
Breaking Fast is in Atlanta, right? It's on.
Yeah, I believe Breaking Fast. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Sorry, Tommy.
check it out.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm one of the lucky few who got to film a movie during these crazy COVID times. So I had my first experience being number one on a call sheet, movie called Ghost of the Ozarks that should be somewhere for you to consume next year. I know they're furiously editing it now and sort of trying to gauge what cinema is going to be like in 2021 and then decide from there what to do with it. But in the meantime, right now, I have a movie out called 12-Hour Shift. That's out on video on demand right now and in certain like select theaters and drive-ins across America. So you can go on like iTunes or Amazon or any cable provider and find 12-Hour Shift. I'm in that. And then I have a movie also on video on demand called Be the Light, which you can stream right now. It's a feel-good like movie musical. And I have another movie on the festival circuit right now called Show Me Yours, which is sort of a pilot. Don't do yeah. So I said it's been really being an actor is very strange because like all you want to do is work. And sort of to piggyback on what Brandon said earlier, these have been very strange times, and a lot of these projects I did last year, 2 years ago, and they're all coming out right now. And it's been wonderful because I'm happy that I got to do them and people are getting to see them, and also a little bittersweet because, this movie should have had its Miami debut, and I was going to be at Tribeca with 12-Hour Shift right before that. And so I'm trying to take all these lemons and make some real good lemonade and just be grateful that, these things are finally being seen.
Do you have a recipe, an old family recipe for the lemonade?
You don't want me to make you anything. So even if there is a family recipe, you don't want me to make it. I can give you eggs. That's about the extent of my culinary. I can't even finish that sentence. That's how bad I am.
I'm gonna watch 12-Hour Shift next week. It's on my list 100%. For me, a short documentary I just finished in March with my producer Michelle on this film. Robert and I this week finally committed to writing something again. We have a meeting next week. It's going to happen. We're going to write it and we're going to shoot it. It's going to be a really kind of weird, out of the box short film, definitely some homo stuff involved. So hopefully by 2022, we'll be submitting it to Out on Film. And then I think this week also I finally finished what I hope is like my final draft of the script I worked on during quarantine about Christine Jorgensen, America's first male to female transgender woman. It's a period piece, it's a musical. It's really dark, but also funny. Anyway, I need someone to give me like $10 million to make it. So if you know anybody, please message us.
I'm assuming you're gonna send that over so I can read it, because you know.
Yes, you read an earlier draft. It is.
I did.
It's much better. Anyway, yeah.
I thought the first draft was great, so
I
I
like
can't wait
the
to
draft
read
I got.
this draft.
So
Yeah.
So
there's
it is very good. I don't want to jerk myself off on camera. It is very good. I think what the problem is it's hard to find someone with 5 to 10 million to say, yes, I want to make a period piece with 2 transgender women in the lead role and throw some music in it. I mean, it's a tough sell. It's a tough sell, but it's good.
feels like it should be a no-brainer.
To me, it is.
Guys, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for this conversation. Stone Fruit open today, streaming, and runs through Tuesday as part of Out on Film. So please check it out. Thank you guys so much for the conversation, and good luck moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
so much
having
for
us.
having us.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.